On the 23rd of September 2024, Jey Uso had a moment that felt like it was long overdue. A yeet that will live in infamy. He didn't just defeat someone, he de-yeeted someone. Okay, that's the first of maybe a few yeet references. For the first time in 14 years in WWE, shockingly enough, the first time in his entire 17-year pro wrestling career, he has become a singles champion, dethroning the dominant and powerful Braun Breaker to win the historic and prestigious WWE Intercontinental Championship. It wasn't an easy road to get there, but it was an arduous one. How did Jey Uso do it, and why does it mean so much? Let's get into it. It's Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin Kellum. Let us feel your eating feelings in the comments below. And make sure you watch the whole video. It's worth it. Come on, do it for Jey. You think you know all the wrestling stories? There's more you haven't heard yet. Join us on Backstage Pass. Even though Braun Breaker's reign with the WWE Intercontinental title was short, it was eventful. 51 days. Nobody seems like they deserve the title, though, more than the veteran Jey Uso, especially this time recently in his career. So why on earth did it take nearly 1.5 decades for Jey Uso to become a singles champion? Oh, you fickle fans that only started watching a few years ago. Join us as we take a look into the deep journey of Jey Uso, mainly focusing on his singles stardom in the 2020s. Yeah, we have an entire video about why his tag team with his brother Jimmy, the Usos, are probably bound for the Hall of Fame. We do have to go back to 2010 when Jey Uso and Jimmy made their main roster debuts in WWE. The Usos entered WWE with that golden Samoan wrestling pedigree, with their father being Rikishi and their blood-connected relative being The Rock, paving a path for them. The high expectations were there before their first match. WWE had a history of successful tag teams from their family, specifically WWE Hall of Famers Afa and Sika, the Wild Samoans. History aside, it wasn't smooth sailing for Jimmy and Jey from the get-go. It took them nearly 4 years to even win their first WWE Tag Team Championship. And even then, they were just kind of there. Tag Team Championships were still not the thing they are now in WWE. At this point, most fans couldn't even distinguish the Usos from which was which, and we really put that on you, the fans. It was a running joke that continued till the end of the 2010s. It wasn't exactly the fault of WWE as a whole that they didn't invest very much in tag team wrestling overall, with Vince McMahon reportedly at one point saying somewhere backstage that he was keen on not having 4 people get paid for one match. So in the early part of 2016, a full 6 years into their time with WWE in the main roster, they were given an opportunity to actually stand out. It was the return of the brand split between Raw and SmackDown, the weekly conferences on TV of WWE, and finally reverting to brand-exclusive rosters. The formula tends to work because it allows more superstars to get a spotlight, and the Usos were a direct beneficiary of this circumstantial change. With WWE going all guns blazing, it seemed like SmackDown got the shorter end of the stick, at least with the women and the tag team divisions. WWE NXT had produced a hot up-and-coming tag team, an American Alpha, and they were going to be placed on the SmackDown roster, presumably putting them in a leading role as good guys of the tag team division. Because of that, they needed bad guys to counter them. Enter the Usos in a perfect utility role. By that point, they were reaching veteran status in the eyes of some, that many years on the road, that much TV exposure, and they had already won titles. But a shift was needed, and the timing was right. It seemed like there was nothing to lose by removing their face paint and flashy "we say Us, you say O's," and turning them into bad dudes with bad attitudes. And the way things played out on SmackDown, that happened to work against American Alpha and completely in the benefit of the Usos. Once they became SmackDown Tag Team Champions before WrestleMania 33, they would enter a feud with another tag team that had found a way to revitalize themselves and get hot at the same time: The New Day, a team made up of a kind of 3-bird flowing rule of 3 with Big E, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods, kickstarting what would be one of the best tag team feuds of the past 2 decades for WWE. The Usos and the New Day were presented as so evenly matched for the tag team titles, and it changed hands almost every single match they had together. It made tag team wrestling matter again in WWE. It was kind of similar to the way that Charlotte and Sasha Banks had a rivalry in the previous year over the women's championships. Now you were getting that with the Usos and the New Day. You have to remember at this point, the New Day had already been the longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history, so they were practically royalty within just 3 years of being together. The Usos were together for more than double that time and were finally getting the respect on their names that they deserve. At this point, they were a true wrecking crew. The next couple of years brought in more success and a lot more championship titles. They established themselves as the undisputed top dogs of WWE's tag teams. But weirdly enough, it was an unfortunate DUI arrest for Jimmy Uso. They were off television for the second half of 2019, ending the decade on a bit of a sour note. Jimmy Uso's injury around WrestleMania 36 would ultimately be a turning point for Jey Uso's career. In the challenging time that was WWE in the pandemic, Jey Uso would find himself in a critical role at a very critical time, with his brother Jimmy on the shelf still dealing with an injury. Roman Reigns would return, and this time he would not be the on-a-pedestal babyface. He would be something completely different, and he needed supporting characters to help this new character that was conniving and evil and filled with hubris get over. Someone who helped him do that was his right-hand man, Jey Uso, except they didn't get along initially. It was believed at this time it would kickstart one of the greatest modern WWE storylines that some feel is still going on today. Jey Uso wasn't the villain here. He returned a valiant fighting babyface who challenged Roman Reigns' new attitude and was slotted to seize the opportunity and challenge his relative, his cousin, for the WWE Universal Championship that Roman had recently acquired with his new bad attitude. When Jey returned, he was still without his brother, so it was one of the first times he truly stood out at his own. It was quite shocking to think that it took a whole decade for that to happen, but the stars aligned, the circumstances were there, and he ran with this opportunity. Roman Reigns was cold and unreceptive, wasn't answering his cousin's text, and was saying he was busy. Jey even asked him why he had Paul Heyman by his side. Oh, what a despicable guy after his history with Brock Lesnar. And Roman Reigns just told him he had everything in control and walked away, ignoring his own family member's invitation for dinner after the show. It might seem like an insignificant segment, but the wheels were turning for what was to come. Jey didn't realize it, but Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman were plotting to make an example out of him for anyone in their family and anyone in WWE who questioned the authority of power that Roman Reigns believed he had as the Universal Champion. And the upcoming Clash of Champions was going to be a defining part of that plan. When Roman Reigns won the match at the Clash of Champions, it was because he brutalized his cousin to such an extent that Jimmy Uso had to throw in the towel and save his own brother. It was Roman Reigns' way of showing the world that he was the new version of himself. He was ruthless, he was filled with hubris, and if people thought he was doing the wrong thing, he believed he was doing the right thing. Not even his own family would be spared from this demented pursuit of power. Jey became the first victim in this pursuit of power. During their rematch in the Hell in a Cell with an I Quit stipulation attached to it, Roman Reigns would once again make a brutal example of an injured Jimmy Uso, who was once again in the ring trying to save his brother, forcing Jey to say those two dreaded words, "I quit. Please don't smash my brother." It showed a level of depth of character performance by Jimmy, by Roman, and obviously by Jey. It was more than just him losing a match and saying, "I quit." You may think that's humiliating, but it gave vulnerability. Throughout all the things he would do at Roman's side for the next few years, you knew he was a human underneath all of it. And it was a special moment to see that humanity on display in such a raw way. Jey had been physically beaten down, but it was a mental beating he took that changed his entire demeanor. After Hell in a Cell, Jey Uso finally, aligned himself with Roman Reigns to become the right-hand man, as Roman would dub him. This put him in a huge spot because he was potentially the next in line as Roman Reigns' successor. At the same time as Jey Uso was suddenly in the biggest storyline of all of wrestling, associated with the biggest name in the industry. He took the opportunity by its throat and established himself as a single star for the first time in his career. Jey Uso was finding himself in a big televised match after match after match, many of which were main events. A few days later, after that brutal Hell in a Cell match, Jey Uso beat Daniel Bryan. And then a week later, he beat Kevin Owens. Everyone who praises Roman Reigns and kisses his feet and says he's the greatest, well, actually, it was supporting players like main event Jey Uso, actually main eventing matches on TV in his absence, and sometimes even on premium live events to keep the whole bloodline story going that made it possible to keep going. Roman Reigns was that abusive person in Jey Uso's life, and Jey was getting manipulated for the whole world to see. In 2021, his stock would only continue to rise. He was the gatekeeper you needed to get past to get to Roman Reigns. Before Jimmy Uso would finally return to in-ring action, Jey had single matches on SmackDown with KO, Shinsuke Nakamura, Bryan, Edge, and Cesaro. He even faced Daniel Bryan in a steel cage match and killed it. So he was getting noticed. Once Jimmy Uso was able to return, the Usos were once more under the shadow of Roman Reigns. They would still be a badass tag team, maybe more badass than they had ever been. They would take just 2 months to get the SmackDown Tag Team Championships around their waist, a title that will be forever associated with them because of how dominant they were with those titles. This time, they would embark on a record-setting reign as tag team champions, taking tag team wrestling to a height it had never been before in WWE. Don't worry, we'll get there. You're wondering what that is. While Jimmy continued to get his singles opportunities from time to time, they shined with big wins over both Dominic and Rey Mysterio. 2022 was a bit of a funny year for Jey when you look at it from a purely stat viewpoint. As a tag team, the Usos not only continued to dominate, but arguably cemented themselves as one of the greatest tag teams of the century by unifying both the Raw and SmackDown tag team titles together. And they did this to defeat the formidable team of Matt Riddle and the legendary Randy Orton, RK Bro, and they were now undisputed tag team champions. They went on to beat the New Day's record from 2015 to 2016 as the longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. Literally, historically, they were, by the stats, the best. If we just stop there, you could put them in the WWE Hall of Fame and it would make complete sense. Some were already starting to whisper that Jey Uso may have been the standout of the two brothers, but we'll get back to that. Being a part of the hottest storyline in the wrestling industry with multiple parts meant that it needed a fresh injection, and it came from an odd person on the outside. Sami Zayn was added to the Bloodline story. It made Jey even more significant of a star because of the odd, we're not gonna get along dialogue between Sami with his joyful kind of like, hey, let me help you guys cheat to win matches and have me be in your group, Jimmy Uso just staring daggers into him. 2022 saw Sami Zayn become the honorary Us, the honorary member of the Bloodline, a decision that Jey Uso was deeply opposed to. While Jimmy Uso seemed to get along with Sami, yeah, they had a cool handshake, Jey felt that he had no business being involved in the Bloodline, a group that was strictly about family. But as 2022 ended and 2023 began, things changed. Things pivoted. By Survivor Series War Games and the big double cage team versus team match, even Roman Reigns appeared to have embraced Sami Zayn and all of the physical sacrifices he had made for the Bloodline, or rather just for Roman, because, Roman wasn't at this time. Yeah, you guys need to remember that. So when he was dispatched to go help Jey Uso, the only member of Team Bloodline in the cage, it was a test of his loyalty. Sami Zayn and Jey Uso's combination would be what won Team Bloodline the match at War Games. The dynamic between Sami and Jey as odd fellows within this group began to change. It came to a point where the Bloodline held a tribal court segment on the 30th anniversary episode of Monday Night Raw. And Sami Zayn was all set to be kicked out of his honorary role. Roman Reigns ordered Solo Sikoa, the new enforcer, to take Sami Zayn out with a Samoan spike to his throat. But it was Jey Uso who stopped it from happening. What? And stood up for the man he once mistrusted before. That weekend, at the 2023 Royal Rumble, when Sami Zayn decided to side with his former tag team partner Kevin Owens, who was brutalized by the Bloodline and Roman Reigns, and when he was given a chair by Roman Reigns and tested his loyalty once again, Roman said, "Smash your former friend with a chair," while he's handcuffed to the rope. Smirking, filled with hubris, Sami Zayn questioning the moment. Nope, boom. That's right, Roman Reigns, you get hit with a chair. Place goes crazy. It was one of the greatest babyface turns in modern WWE history. And Jey Uso was right there for all of it. A cruel twist of fate for a few reasons, as immediately they would all have to beat down on Sami Zayn. It was also cruel, but cruelty that Roman Reigns had earned upon himself. A little bit of that PTSD for him, as he experienced a chair shot to the back 9 years earlier when the previous group he was in, the Shield, broke up and Seth Rollins turned on him. But this time, it was getting a huge babyface pop, and Jey Uso was even worse off in this situation, as he trusted Sami Zayn. "I trusted you. I was the only one who spoke up for you during his early association with the Bloodline." He ended up being the one saving him from getting kicked out. And then just 6 days after that, you go and do this to the tribal chief? Pain and disbelief on Jey Uso's face was so visible. It was awesome. Drama dripping off the screen. It was Jimmy who ended up taking Sami Zayn out while Jey watched on. And it was rough for 2 years for Jey Uso, despite all the tag team success he had. He continued to be under the spell of Roman Reigns and was put in a position for a little while where it seemed unclear if he would side with Sami Zayn and break away or stay loyal to the Bloodline. Of course, he chose family for the loyalty, and it culminated with him headlining. That's right, taking the tag team titles that they still held all the way to the main event of WrestleMania, something that had never happened with a tag team championship in WWE. Yes, the Usos would main event, defending the titles against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, who reunited and wanted to redeem themselves once more. Tag team wrestling at this level, oh hell yeah. I saw this match live in Los Angeles, and during a big weekend where it was announced that WWE would have a huge new ownership deal and Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes would main event night 2, other big matches, this was the match that stole the weekend. Dare I say, it may be one of the best tag team matches in WWE or modern wrestling history. It is that damn good. The much talked about and debated Dave Meltzer Wrestling Observer 5-star rating was dubbed upon this very acclaimed and worthy of that honor match. You spreadsheet stat weirdos, yeah, they may have lost the championships in this match, but that's not the point. This was the oosiest WWE main event of all time. The fact that Jey went from being someone that people was one half of a tag team and he's just a tag team guy and that's just all you are. No, he went on to become a WrestleMania main eventer and was still the tag team guy in just a few years is pretty insane when you think about it. Add to the fact that he was a central part of an overarching storyline that fans absolutely, diehards and casuals, were on board with. The post-WrestleMania 39 arc for Jey Uso first resulted in his brother defecting from the Bloodline before Jey was put in another will he or won't he position, where he had to choose who he would align with. This time, the choice was even harder because both sides were his blood relatives. Jey would choose his brother and turn on the Bloodline before becoming the first man in almost 1,300 days to do the unthinkable, to humble, to not let Roman Reigns be perceived as a god, to pin Roman Reigns. Yes, this happened in the Bloodline Civil War main event of the Money in the Bank Premium Live event, maybe that was the Usos main event. Big wins at critical moments make wrestlers. This may have been one of those moments when you really think about it. From there, he was suddenly in a spot where he would be headlining the second largest event of the year for the biggest prize in wrestling, SummerSlam. Nobody was questioning whether or not he deserved it. He was the guy in this storyline alone who was powerful enough to justify putting himself in that position, headlining two of the biggest events in one calendar year. The finish of SummerSlam, though, left a lot to be desired, with kind of just a deflating sense of expectation. Jimmy Uso would return and turn on his brother Jey. Yeah, and go back to the bloodline. It didn't make any sense that he went back to the bloodline, right? Yeah, we didn't know. But it was going to set up something big, something that Jimmy and Jey have gone on the record saying they wanted. A singles match between them at WrestleMania 40. But that marked the end of Jey Uso's story with the bloodline, after being the second most important figure in the group for years. After first quitting WWE, Cody Rhodes convinced him to join Monday Night Raw, and it was finally his time to shine as a single star on a separate conference of WWE, away from the rest of his family over on the blue brand of SmackDown. WWE had referred to him as main event Jey Uso once more, and this certainly made sense, making a clear point to distinguish him from his brother Jimmy. When he was announced as the newest member of the Raw roster on Payback 2023, fans completely embraced him in this new role. It almost seemed like an overnight sensation. He took his stardom to a whole new level. But it wasn't overnight. It was 13 years of toiling and grinding that got him there, from being associated with the biggest villain in wrestling in the 3 years prior. Both as a rival and as an ally, Jey would then begin to associate himself with the biggest good guy in the wrestling business, Cody Rhodes. The two hit it off and instantly became undisputed tag team champions by beating the Judgment Day's Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Their reign didn't even last 10 days, but the only purpose of it was to have a confrontation on SmackDown between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. A face-off to remind you that we were going to get a rematch between them after Roman Reigns had once again cheated his way out of losing a title and winning it and retaining it because his whole family would get involved and Cody got cheated, and you remember the whole thing. The story needed to be finished. As quickly as they won the titles, they would lose it back to Priest and Balor on Raw. Despite all of the bad blood between them, Sami Zayn happily embraced Jey Uso's move to Raw. An attempt at a singles glory was special here. Meanwhile, Drew McIntyre was having his own slow-burning turn into a villain. Jey Uso was his first target, because remember, when Jey was in the bloodline, he gave Drew McIntyre a lot of hell. Drew mistrusted Jey more than Jey mistrusted Sami Zayn back in 2022. Trust is important. And it was a smart way for a modern character to constantly reflect on Jey's history, doing bad things and saying, hey, I didn't forget about the past, pal. Jey Uso and him couldn't see eye to eye, and he ultimately became a target of Drew, finally turning to his dark side. Yes, after making two big allies in Cody and Sami, World Heavyweight Champion at the time, Seth freaking Rollins, joined them along with the returning Randy Orton to take on the purple and black squadron of the Judgment Day, which was wreaking hell on Monday Night Raw, who then also got Drew McIntyre on their side. Yes, the lines were drawn for Survivor Series War Games in Chicago, Allstate Arena, packed crowd. He was successful for the second year in a row, and it also meant that he headlined 4 of the biggest premium live events in 2023: WrestleMania 39, Money in the Bank, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. Once he was done, Jey was a mainstay on Raw. One of the biggest stars by far. One of the most over guys by far. The reactions kept getting better every week, and he made his mission clear: to become a singles champion for the first time in his career, to legitimize himself as his own man, not just his family's man, his own man. A little after Survivor Series, Jey Uso challenged Seth Rollins for the world title. He would lose, something that people expected, but it was a message that he was on a new level, a new trajectory, a new sense of momentum. In 2024, He was the #1 entry in the men's Royal Rumble match. Brother was number 2. He managed to last an impressive 50 minutes in the big all-star match before being eliminated by Gunther. This set the stage for an intercontinental title clash with the Ring General, which Jey would also lose. Jimmy Uso was the man tormenting his brother, holding him back. So it finally led to a highly anticipated brother versus brother match in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, at WrestleMania 40. We've seen this before on the show of shows. Bret Hart and Owen Hart got to do this at WrestleMania 10. Matt versus Jeff Hardy at WrestleMania 25. So to have two of the most decorated tag team wrestlers in modern WWE history clash at WrestleMania, the expectations were through the roof. They would unfortunately turn in one of the biggest stains on Jey Uso's singles career, because the match between him and his brother Jimmy didn't go that well. Jey reportedly would blame it on the timing they got and what people thought could be a modern-day version of Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. And it turned out to be maybe just a flop. I don't know exactly. I was there. I had high expectations for it. And that's when the voices of some detractors started to show up, criticizing Jey Uso for being too gimmicky and not having any versatile moveset. He just hits people and kicks people. Who's the guy who's won a match with a super kick in WWE before, or a big splash off the top rope? I don't know, probably a couple of Hall of Famers. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect example of why social media and real life are two different realities. Because when you watch Monday Night Raw, Jey Uso's in-arena reactions are incredible and kept getting louder every single week. Yeet after yeet. On the Raw after WrestleMania 40, he would bounce back by pinning his rival Drew McIntyre to become the #1 contender for the new World Heavyweight Champion, Damian Priest. Backlash 2024 in Lyon, France was a stage where Jey Uso had such an iconic entrance that the match itself is almost forgotten about. The entrance itself is something so aggrandizing. You gotta match yourself to that. If you want to be a part of a Jey Uso entrance, you gotta think, we gotta beat that one time he was in Lyon and everybody lost their minds. It wasn't a bad match. Jey's entrance was so good it almost kind of overshadowed it. That's just the way it was. It was right back to work at the next goal, being the King of the Ring. Jey Uso wasn't originally supposed to be a part of the tournament, but replaced Drew McIntyre when he declared that he was medically unfit to compete. Jey managed to make it to the semifinals, beating both Finn Balor and Dragunov before losing out, making his way to the finals to the man who would eventually win the entire tournament in Saudi Arabia, Gunther. Jey was a character that a lot of fans, both young and old, were emotionally invested in. A gimmick they cared about, a guy they cared about, a wrestler who connected with a lot of people over a wide spectrum of demographics. But he wasn't getting those singles wins, at least the ones that people would remember on these premium live events. Jey would focus on yet another goal, the Money in the Bank briefcase. And after that didn't work out, he was back in the mix for the IC Championship that was held by Braun Breaker, who was breaking out big after his successful run in NXT. He managed to get through a mini tournament and set up a clash with the son of Rick Steiner, a man he looked at as nearly unstoppable in 2024. Braun Breaker was a hell of a guy to take on in this situation. The Intercontinental title clash on the 23rd of September, in front of a huge, loud, raucous crowd on Monday Night Raw, is a landmark moment for Jey Uso in his career. It was a few days shy of the 4th anniversary of his Universal Championship clash match with Roman Reigns, a breakthrough moment in his career at that point. Would this be another breakthrough moment? This was the match that gave him his first major leap into single stardom, a chance to show he could be a guy to move a storyline, the most historic championship in WWE that he could get his hands on. He had a shot at it against a guy that everyone thought was the next Brock Lesnar in Braun Breaker. Getting the key spot of main eventing Monday Night Raw, 20 minutes of TV time, absolutely bringing the crowd into the palms of their hands, breaking through outside of the ring barriers, jumping off the top rope, sucking the air out of the entire arena, kicking out at 2.5. Jey Uso would go to the top rope once more, and boom, it happened. The yeet of the century, Jey Uso would become the new WWE Intercontinental Champion. Online reviews for the match poured in, especially over on Cage Match, a great resource, by the way, tip of the cap to them, with many people saying, really good match for the IC title. This is the best Jey Uso has looked in a singles match in a long time. Another claiming this is one of their favorite Raw matches of the year. One more saying this match absolutely had no right to be this good, but certainly the culmination of years of hard work can be summed up in this one comment from one fan who gave it a 9 out of 10, declaring 14 long years, 6 previous singles titles to lose in opportunities. Finally, Jey Uso has won his championship. This wasn't just his first singles championship in WWE. This is the first singles championship in his entire pro wrestling career. He was once in the conversation of being the most worthy names of dethroning Roman Reigns, who had the world title in a completely different scenario. To be in that conversation, that's meaningful. But he took the long path to finally get what he was gunning for. It may not be a WWE championship, but his win is going to continue to elevate the prestige of the WWE Intercontinental Championship, and that is so meaningful. It puts Jey Uso's name in the same line as his cousin Roman Reigns, as Macho Man Randy Savage, Bret the Hitman Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels. We could go on. The crowd in Ontario, California went berserk for the first singles title win of Jey Uso. It felt like it was a long time coming, a magnificent, emotional evocation of the audience. Yes, even his single story between September 2023 and 2024 has been incredible in and of itself, let alone a few years, let alone the last 14 years of his WWE career. The fact that it took so long is what makes it mean so much more. Something I need to emphasize to those of you that get a little fickle, that lose your patience. The reaction he got wasn't some lightning in a bottle moment. It was something that was built to. It was the culmination of one of the best character arcs we've seen in a babyface in WWE in a long time. It's up there with what Cody Rhodes got at WrestleMania. Whether he has a long or short reign with the Intercontinental title, it feels like one of the most deserved title wins we've seen in wrestling in quite some time. It's also going to go down as one of the top moments of 2024 in TV wrestling. One of the top moments in Jey Uso's career, for sure. It looks like only it's going to be the start of something special, something new, a new chapter, a new title. Let's see what's next. Whether it's been a single star or a tag team star, Jey Uso's body of work in the last 7 years has been absolutely incredible. I'm going to say it again. There's a place for him and his brother waiting in the Hall of Fame at the end of all of this. Hopefully he goes on and up from here. Maybe a world title is next. What do you think? How did you feel when Jey Uso won the title? Let us know in the comments below.